I think maybe, just maybe, Deion Sanders might have figured it out. He might have gotten to the point that everybody else who had also been at the point he was ultimately came to the realization of. And that is, you can talk the talk all you'd like, but if you can't walk the walk, you turn into a human punching bag. You are a laughing stock. And that's what happened in Colorado in 2023. They were the talk of the town in September. Things were great. Things were interesting. Things were going well. And all anybody could talk about, myself included, was Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. And then they fell on their face. And they look like clowns because they refused to recognize and admit that they had fallen on their face. And when you have complete lack of self-awareness, when everybody else but you recognizes one thing, and you continue to insist that that's not the case. I'm going to sneeze, I think. When you continue to insist that, like, hey, no, I'm still the top dog. We're still cool. We're still relevant. We're still great. And you're 4-8. Nobody buys that shtick. And this year, what are the headlines surrounding Deion Sanders? Not a whole lot. What are the headlines surrounding the Colorado Buffaloes? Not much. They're 5-2. And I find this kind of quote that Deion gave to The Athletic really interesting, because after they pretty well thumped Arizona on Saturday, Deion Sanders said, "We're not who we used to be, but we sure ain't where we want to be." That's the things. Those are the things that good head coaches say. Those are the things that guys who see the whole picture say. Those are the things that coaches who aren't coaching their team strictly to be the world's worst helicopter parents say. When you say, we have changed, because the bravado that Deion Sanders came to Colorado with was unmatched and unparalleled. There aren't many people who get into, and I have lamented this on this podcast. I think that coaches should say what they mean what they say, and say what they think. And very few do that. And the reason is because generally we in the media turn that into cannon fodder for all sorts of topics and just beat the hell out of those topics. And then those coaches have to answer those questions till the end of time. And so it's why somebody like Lane Kiffin has kind of, like, he hasn't backed away from saying what he thinks or saying what he means or meaning what he says, saying what he thinks. But he's recognized that there is a time and place, and that's sort of the maturation of a person, not just a person, but a coach as well. Like, you don't always have to say what you think. It's like if you have like a little kid and you're explaining to them the process of like telling the truth, and they're like, "Mom, that lady in that dress looks fat at the store," and you got to go through the process of being like, "Is that true?" Yes, it is. But that doesn't mean we have to say it. That doesn't mean you have to just blurt it out. It doesn't mean everybody else has to know what you're thinking. It doesn't mean that we all don't already know the thing that it's true, and the only way we'll recognize it is if you say it. And that's where Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and Shiloh Sanders were before this season. They're 5-2, and they are a quiet 5-2. And if I were to have asked you, in your mind, is there any way possible that Colorado could do anything quietly? If they were 2-5, and I said to you, Colorado is 2-5, do you think they are a quiet 2-5? Your answer would be hell no. Because history tells you that Deion Sanders is going to be flashy. Deion Sanders is going to talk. Travis Hunter is going to be flashy, and Travis Hunter is going to talk, and Shiloh Sanders is going to talk, and Shedeur Sanders is going to talk. And for the most part, they've shut up. and they've done their talking on the field, which is what everybody else who's been in that situation kind of gets to. Lane Kiffin does not speak with the brutal honesty that he once did, or the sharp wit, or whatever the case may be. He still says, I think for the most part, a lot of things that he thinks or feels and means them, but he doesn't say them with the arrogance that he once did. Nick Saban used to speak with a bit of an arrogance. And you know what? When you win title after title after title, you get to say those things. It's sort of a similar situation with like Dabo Swinney, right? Dabo Swinney, you can say a lot of things when you are on top. But the second you fall off that perch, you need to then like reassess where you are. And I don't know that he did that. And for Deion Sanders, it was kind of the reverse, right? Like you come in very braggadocious, very arrogant, speaking condescendingly to the players that are in your program, and then things don't go well for you, and you continue to be braggadocious, arrogant, cocky, and condescending. That's a bad mix. Sucking at your job and being arrogant, condescending prick are not, like, that is not connect the dots that is easily put together. And so, like, yes, earlier in the season, did Deion Sanders have a situation where he basically said, like, I'm not answering questions from CBS, and that reporter's not allowed to be here because he's a jerk? Yes. Outside of that, they have quietly went about their business. Their two losses are to Kansas State, who's in the top 25, and Nebraska, who, before they got their ass kicked by Indiana on Saturday, you could have argued should have been in the top 25. Colorado has lost to two football teams that are better than them. And they've taken care of business outside of that. And I don't know that I ever would have thought that we would be here, that we would get to the point where Deion Sanders would say, we're not who we were. We have figured out some things, and we have recognized that maybe it would be a little bit better for us if we let the play do the talking instead of running our mouths and then hoping to God that we can back it up. Because there is nothing more powerful than kicking somebody's ass and you don't have to say a word. You don't even have to point to the scoreboard. You don't even have to go, because you know that you just kicked their ass and they know that you just kicked their ass. There is not a more powerful thing in college football than that. And you know what? Deion Sanders in Colorado, they kicked UCF's ass. They kicked Arizona's ass on the road. You don't have to talk. You don't have to say anything. Travis Hunter has been on a podcast talking about how it's not fair that Ashton Jeanty is viewed higher than him in the Heisman Trophy ballot, because if he had 95 touches, what do you think he would do with the ball? Yes, that is self-indulgent and ridiculous, and Deion Sanders could probably address that and be like, hey, who cares? Who cares about that? Because we need to focus and put our efforts towards something else. But Colorado's 5-2. They are almost assured a bowl game. They don't have any more ranked teams on their schedule the rest of the way. They play Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. There is a chance that Texas Tech or Colorado is 10-2. That's probably a little high. There's a chance that they're 9-3, 8-4. And we're not talking about them. And in other cases, I would sit here and tell you, like, we should be talking about undefeated Navy. We should be talking about undefeated Army. And theoretically, we should be talking about 5-2 Colorado. But in this instance, I'm glad that we're not. I'm glad that the conversation isn't, well, we should be 7-0, but we got screwed at Kansas State, or whatever the case may be. It's a good thing that Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes have recognized, like, hey, you got to humble yourself a little bit when you've been humbled. When you go 4-8 after talking about how great you are going to be, when you get your bleep pushed in at Oregon, or you get your ass kicked by Washington State, you can't then come back and be the big tough guy on the block. Like, that's just not how it works. And most people recognize that. But I don't know that I would have ever thought that Deion Sanders would be in that camp, that he would say, guys, we're going to have to learn this lesson. And when we learn this lesson, we're going to have to apply it. And they're better for it. But it's a lesson that a lot of people that are arrogant, braggadocious, brash have to learn. And he's learned it. And I think they're better for it. So I'm glad that we're not talking every week about 5-2 Colorado, because that means they're put kind of in their right basket of where they deserve to be talked about. It's not fluff. It's not manufactured. It's not man-made. They are being judged by what they are doing on the football field right now. And I think that's what everybody should kind of strive for. Want to know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know. You think Deion Sanders needs to turn back on the braggadocious, turn back on the cocky, or is Colorado right where they belong? Let me hear from you in the comments down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. Goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow.